not yet. Hello, everyone, and welcome to yet another episode of Expert Insights Live. Uh, yeah, if there's anyone who's joined in, or if you can hear us, if you can just comment in the section and tell us where you're joining us from, that would be helpful just to ensure that we're just not randomly talking to each other and there are people out there. I've received a notification, to be fair, which says that the event is happening right now. Tushar Gupta is live, so well, apparently I am. Let's just wait for a few seconds just to see that if there are people. If
Sure.
anyone can hear us, please just comment and let us know that you can hear us. Uh, yeah, I can't see any comments yet, so I'm not sure if there are people. I received a notification to be. Ah, let's see. I can hear myself on LinkedIn. Hmm. Okay. There. Oh, there are people. Thank
Nice.
you. There's someone on YouTube, Prasad. Thank you, Prasad, for confirming that you can hear us. There's also someone on LinkedIn. Unfortunately, their name is not popping up, but they're from USA, Salem. Welcome, welcome. So, all right. Thank you guys for joining. I'm pretty sure this will join in due time. So, Sairam, why not just start with introducing yourself, who you are, and yeah, something about yourself.
Sure. So, yeah, very excited to be here. Thanks, Tushar. So, I have been in the AI space for the past 15 years. I've worked across three domains, including automotive, data centers, and mobile devices. So, kind of covered the spectrum of where AI has been deployed and continues to be deployed. I've worked both in the mix of applied and pure research. A lot of my work is in the perception side, but I've also done work on language models before they, were hyped and what they are today. So definitely, a lot of experience before ChatGPT. That's definitely something I'd say. I'm also a published author. I had my book come out recently. It's called AI for the Rest of Us, an illustrated introduction. And outside of work, I write a Substack called Gradient Ascent. It's read by over 26,000 people worldwide. And I basically
Amazing.
try to talk about what's going on in research and try to tie it to real production and real world stories. So that's a bit about me.
Nice. Thanks a lot for that, Sairam. So, just for the people who've joined in, I can see a lot of comments have popped up. Rakesh, thanks for confirming that you can hear us. Hi, Bhavesh Mittal. Yeah, there's Badavel Subramaniam, and Arun found something interesting. Thank you guys for confirming that you all can hear us. Uh, so, just a few things. At the bottom, you can see over here that there's a ticker going on. And so Sairam is conducting a live workshop over the weekend, which is called Machine Learning and Generative AI Design, System Design, as you can see it right here. So we're giving away a 50% voucher to two people. So please comment hashtag packed. Uh, Minakshi, thank you for commenting packed, but please add hashtag because it's a tool. Unless and until you add hashtag, the tool doesn't pick it up. So please comment with hashtag packed, and yeah, we'll do a couple of raffles, one somewhere in the middle of the session and one towards the end. Also, if you have any queries to ask Sairam, this is your opportunity. You get to speak to him live, ask him your questions, and he will answer them for you. In the meantime, Sairam, I've prepared a few questions. So
Okay.
let's start with them. So okay. So wait, I have to read them. My glasses are proper. Okay, these are my reading glasses. So so Sairam, how do you tell if someone truly understands ML versus just knowing how to run models?
I think running models is part of the whole understanding ML bit, but it's a small fraction of the understanding ML bit. I think the real insight comes from somebody who can um, know two things. One, if something goes wrong, being able to identify where it's gone wrong and not immediately look at the model and wonder, oh, should I change the architecture of this model?
Hmm.
Should I swap it out with something else? but instead think holistically, like, is it a data issue? Is it a serving issue? Is it a model issue? And being able to spot that, that's the first bit. The second bit is kind of something you get with experience, in my opinion, which is knowing when to sunset a model, because if you've been developing a model, that you get attached to it quite a bit. You spent a lot of time and energy making sure it's tuned properly, it's out in production, and then when the time comes that you have to swap it because the business demands that, right? At that point of time,
Yeah.
being mature enough to know that it's important to sunset this in favor of something more practical. I think those are the two things that I use besides the conventional stuff, like you can talk about debugging and stuff like that. But these are two things that I
Hmm.
use generally to spot those who've been in the space for a while versus those who are just starting to run their first models.
Yeah. Thanks a lot for that. Just a reminder again, anyone in the audience, if you have any queries for Sairam, this is your opportunity. You have access to him for the next hour. Please feel free to ask as many questions as you would like, and yeah, we will try to answer them all during the session. So to move on to the next one, Sairam, what's one thing people focus too much on, and one thing they don't focus enough on while breaking into machine learning or well, generative AI, for that matter?
I think the most common thing I've seen is that people focus on trends and frameworks a lot because
Mm-hmm.
anytime some new framework comes out or anytime something starts trending on Hacker News or X or anywhere else, people start, okay, I need to pick this up, and then you'll follow that up with people adding that to their resume, saying that now I know this particular thing. Um,
Mm-hmm.
the real thing that you should be over indexing on, if anything, is fundamentals, like the first principle understanding of machine learning and AI. That is very crucial. It doesn't matter whether you're working with agents, whether you're working with classical machine learning, that never changes. Like, how do you identify when something is wrong? How do you make sure your data is properly prepared for the model? How do you decide whether machine learning or AI is the right fit for this particular problem? Those are the things that you should be spending a lot more time on. And of course, companion skills like having, I want to be careful here because now we've come into this space where we say now there's AI engineering, there's what used to be called machine learning engineering is kind of changed in definition a little bit, because now previously
Yeah.
that used to mean people who trained models and deployed them. Now it means not necessarily training models, because now all of a sudden models are like huge and there's a handful of labs that train, whereas most people spend their time on MLOps, productionizing, those kinds of aspects. So focus on the skills that will help you learn and grow on that particular path, right? Whether you're taking an AI engineering role, which is what I just mentioned, or whether you're focusing on modeling, like actually building these models. Yeah, it's important to focus on what will augment your ability to do a better job there, versus saying, okay, I learned LangChain, now I'm going to learn something else, and build a laundry list of frameworks that if you don't know how to use them or when to use them, then there's no real value. So that's
Yeah.
that's what I feel.
True. I know it's very unfortunate that people move on directly to in the context of regular language learning, people move on to essay writing directly and they don't know the basics and the grammar of things.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's a good analogy.
yeah, there are quite a lot of questions that have popped in. I think one thing that Apeksha is doing really well is, and thanks for the reminder, Apeksha, that Apeksha has added the link to Sairam's workshop, which is happening over the weekend. So you can click on the link in the chat. As you can see it, I cannot click it away here. But let's just quickly show them what the session is about. I think because we have access to you, so if you could just tell them what the session is. Can you see my screen, Saira?
It's loading, and yes, I can see it now. So yeah,
Okay.
basically, I feel that as AI now, it allows you to write code, or at least, I mean, I want to be very, very careful about saying this. I'm not saying that AI assisted code is directly ready for production. What I am saying is it made access to writing code and actually being able to write useful code a lot easier than before. Of course, the tool is always dependent on the wielder and not self powerful by itself. But that being said, now the shift is really from people who can write code to people who can architect systems. Because now if you
Yeah.
can offload a part of the code that is boilerplate, then you need to think about, okay, how does my system come together? How do I solve the business
Mhm.
problem? And what types of decisions do I have to take to solve the problem? And then not only solve it, like once the system is live, what happens there? How do we make sure things are running smoothly? What are the things that we have to monitor? And then sort of having certain patterns that you can come back to when you are trying to design a system for the first time, or let's say you've designed a system a few times. It's just some things that you can reference and come back to in terms of being able to architect systems that scale and systems that actually solve real world problems, and not just reside within a small Jupyter notebook. So that's what the session is about on a high level, and we'll take a couple of problems to walk through and hopefully have a lot of fun building uh, solutions to
Right.
those. And then at the end of the session, there's also a design challenge where participants are going to be designing based on whatever we discussed during the session. There'll be a design session where they'll get to apply some of those ideas into a problem, and then we'll have hot seats and reviews. So it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm very excited about it, and excited to meet everybody and learn and
Yeah.
share what I know.
I can see that there are a lot of takeaways as well in the session that I've just highlighted that on the screen over here. There's a playbook that the audience will get, the world case studies that you spoke about. You're providing some downloadable design templates and also certification of completion for anyone who's attended the session, which is amazing. So, can you talk about this playbook and the design templates that you would be providing during and post the
Sure.
session?
So I think there are a few things that keep coming up when people send me DMs or ask me questions about AI and machine learning. One of them is like, is there a sort of a checklist that we can use to think about how to build systems? And for me, there is no universal playbook because every problem is very different, but there are some principles that you can apply
Mm,
regardless of the problem space. And the other interesting thing is across traditional ML and generative AI, as we know it today, there's a lot of commonality in how you approach the solution space for a problem and how you go about it. So the playbook will focus on those aspects. So anytime you need to design a system, whether it's for your own hobby or whether it's for something at work, you can reference this and figure out, okay, have I covered the bases that I need to? So that way, when you build a system, it's measure twice, cut once. So you're able to
right.
build a system that is well designed. That's the first part. Now the template is, I guess it's more dependent on the problems that we'll be discussing, and I don't want to give too much away. But the point is that the
Mhm.
templates will help you identify patterns that you can then apply. Like if it's a problem in search, or if it's a problem in perception, or if it's a problem regarding retrieval, like how do you what are the commonalities across generations, like that, so the templates
Yeah.
will cover that.
Amazing. And just one last thing about the session before we move on, and I promise
Sure.
everyone that we won't talk about it until later again, at least till the end. But just one thing, because we've got so many people over here, I'm pretty sure they would be wondering whether this session is for them. So, are there any sort of prerequisites that they should know something? I'm pretty sure you're not going to be teaching them Python programming. So, Python programming
No.
would be a clear prerequisite. So, what
So
else would be the prerequisites?
sure, I think like the first thing I want to clarify is that this is a session on design. So, and it's basically for those who have to learn to build systems. Now, there are different types of scenarios where you might find this useful. Option one is you are actually working in a role where you have to work with your teammates or leads and design machine learning systems for production. Option two is you
Mhm.
are somebody who's learning system design for interviews. And option three is you are somebody who is maybe trying to transition from, say, a traditional software background where you sort of had experience building scalable systems, but you're curious about how does that change when we're talking about machine learning and AI, right? So those are the
Yeah.
three primary types of people that I think will find this session very useful. But in terms of the prerequisites, just understanding the fundamentals of machine learning, if you know, I think I've briefly listed them. I mean, not all of them are like a very strict bar. We will try to cover some of the basics. But again, I want to highlight that this session is about design principles, and so if you, I will not be spending too much time talking about what is a validation set or a training set or what's the
Hmm.
fundamentals of LLMs and so on. So those are things that I hope you already have a basic understanding of, or if you feel that you need to understand that a little bit better, then I can always point you towards resources to learn those in depth. I usually share resources on my LinkedIn to help people, but I'm happy to point you towards resources there. So that is the main prerequisite. So um, hopefully that answers the question.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it truly does. I can see that there are a lot of questions which have popped in. So, yeah, let's start taking them up.
Sure.
Ta-ta. Let's start with, yeah, that's first one. Oh, there's someone interested in your book. Can you provide a highlight what the book covers? The book that you've
Okay.
written.
Yeah, so the book is actually for people who are in the messy middle, and let me define what that means. So you have the business side of a company that focuses on P&L, what is the return on investment for a particular initiative, and they talk in those terms. And then you have the engineering side of the company that talks in KPIs, metrics, and technical aspects. And there is a disconnect there between the two. And for a company to be successful, everyone should be speaking somewhat the same language. So the book covers the fundamentals and more advanced topics in AI in plain English. It does not assume that you have a background in mathematics. It does not assume you know how to code. It's illustrated so that you can understand how things work, and in a way that would be memorable for you to remember the concept. And by reading the book, if you are in this messy middle where you have to be the translator between say you're an engineering leader and you want to explain things to your management so that they understand why something is or not possible, this will help you translate. And vice versa, if you are in the business side of things, or a product manager or a program manager, or somebody who is just like making a transition, but there's too much jargon in AI, this will help you understand the fundamentals of how all algorithms work, right up to ChatGPT and Stable Diffusion in plain English. So that's what the book is about.
Amazing. There's someone called Babu Sridhar on YouTube, and Babu inquires that where to start AI journey. Wow, that's a broad question.
Very broad question, but I'll try to address it
Yeah,
in for
yeah.
multiple categories. So first of all, I don't know your background, Babu, but I'm like if you are like say a software engineer, somebody who knows how to code, I would say the best way to start your learning journey is to do the Fast.ai course. The Fast.ai course is free. It's and it takes a code first approach to teaching you the basics of deep learning and how everything works. And the most interesting part of it is it flips the script. So it doesn't start with the basics and then build up. Rather, it takes sort of the uh, end-to-end application. The very first class is like you build a classifier for something, but then it unpacks how the classifier works, so level by level. So that I found it very, very useful, and I recommend it to most people who know how to code. If you come from a non-coding background, then of course, again, plug here, read my book. But besides that, I think there's a number of YouTube channels and books and resources that are available to you. There's a deep learning.ai course by Andrew Ng called AI for Everyone, if you have absolutely no idea what AI is. But let's say that you're a product manager who doesn't code, I would actually say, just use Claude or ChatGPT or something, and then do the Fast AI course with it, or work on the. There's a course again by Andrew Ng on Coursera. I think it's just called Deep Learning. It's called the Deep Learning Specialization. You can do that and
Yeah.
start. But if you ask me, like you have only one choice to suggest, I would just say pick a problem that you want to solve and start building a solution for it. It doesn't matter if it works or not, but then incrementally as you go through that process, try to understand how different parts of it work. And you can use AI as a companion to help you understand it. And wherever you're stuck, of course, you can go to more trusted sources like the ones I mentioned. So that would be the most fun way to do it, because then you're actually building something and then that sticks with you a lot more than just going through a checklist of courses and books.
Amazing. Thanks for that. I think someone's mentioned AI assistant code being helpful, which leads me to my next question. That with AI coding assistants everywhere, what skills matter more now, and what's
Hmm.
becoming non-negotiable for engineers?
So I think software engineering principles are more important now than ever before. And I feel like a
Mhm.
lot of folks who are just coming into the field, um, like I might sound a bit like a dinosaur here, but when I was first, learning to work in the industry, there was a lot of process that you had to go through. There were code reviews, and there would be like questions for every line of code, like why have you written it this way? This is more optimized, or why aren't you using the like this the style guide and so on. So there used to be a lot of learning that you had while writing code. Nowadays, because AI is able to write a lot of the boilerplate code, and in some cases, like something even more, there is a reluctance to actually understand how good code should be written and basically the software engineering principles that accompany it. So that's a non-negotiable for sure. And the second thing you need to know is taste. Like there may be multiple ways to solve the same problem or implement the same thing, but understanding trade-offs and knowing how something should look so that it works for your particular use case, that comes with experience and practice, and actually sitting with the seniors in your engineering org and just going through that process of seeing how they think, how they approach it. And now I would say that the skill of knowing whether a piece of code should exist or not matters the most, because one of the things that AI coding assistants tend to do is sometimes they over engineer what should be done very trivially, or
Hmm.
they don't implement it in a way that it can scale. So just knowing whether sections of code should exist, or whether if they should exist, how in which form they should exist. So I guess like that's what matters.
Perfect. Let's do one more question before oh, Babu is thanking you for answering the AI question.
That was
Yeah, so let's do one more question before we move on to the first raffle. Uh, so, when shipping a generative AI feature, what's your personal production checklist?
Ooh, that's a tricky one, but the one thing I will say is, first of all, do you need it? Do you need generative AI? Is this is a like can is a heuristic or some traditional approach sufficient for you to solve it? Because if
Hmm.
your application is not, if you're applying or using a generative AI model for the sake of buzzwords, or just so that you can say mine is AI powered, then that's the wrong thing. Whereas if it's genuinely improving the solution, and if AI is the core or the heart of the solution, then that's the first point. So knowing whether AI is needed or not, that's the first point. Second is like the model that you have to choose, and sort of how it plays with the system. I'm going to sort of there's a lot of items on the checklist, but I'm going to put some things as non-negotiable. So data sanity, verifying that you have the data cleaned, processed, um, all of that, regardless of machine learning project, you have to do that properly. So I'm just going to focus on generative AI since you asked that. Again,
Yeah.
um, that so the choice of the model, depending on, and like in some applications, like you can take RAG for example, your retriever need not be a overly powerful model, or your whereas your generator might have to be more powerful. So there might be trade-offs, because if your retriever takes too much time, is very complex, then you're going to have your users waiting for several seconds, which is a deal breaker, right? But at the same time, if your retriever is not a good is not a strong model, then you may have other issues, like it doesn't retrieve well. So then you know chunking, all of this. I don't want to go into the weeds there, but basically, like model choice, what do you choose?
Right.
And then the third thing is like knowing what good looks like and knowing what bad looks like before you even build the thing, like what is acceptable, what is not acceptable, and can you catch it automatically? So just being able to have a mental model of how that is and being able to articulate it, I think that's very important. And then the thing that a lot of people miss is the cost, and this actually ties to the model selection bit as well. Like, can which model do you need, and what are the cost implications of it? Because it
Hmm.
might be fine for you to do the math and say, ah, this is within our budget, but the moment something goes into production and hundreds of thousands of people are using it, it quickly adds up. So just
Hmm.
knowing like what are the hotspots for cost, latency, those things, and then being able to log everything. Just like build a ridiculously if there's one thing you want to go overkill on is like error handling and safety and making sure you're able to catch all the issues, um,
Yeah.
or like that you know and may not know yet, so that at least when
Hmm.
something happens, you have a trace that allows you, because again, you're dealing with a probabilistic system, right? Unlike traditional
Yeah.
software. So just being able to understand what can go wrong, that's one. And then the last thing is like evaluations. I know that's a very volatile hot topic right now, but like evaluations for different stages, like model level evaluations, system level evaluations, and all this. So these are some. There's way more, but I'll probably stop here because those are some parts of my checklist.
These are good health and hygiene checklists to be sure, like to be fair. Like, yeah, it's definitely important to be aware of these things beforehand. I think we're in the time and era where everyone thinks that just throwing the AI sync at it will solve the problems. But so- yeah, sometimes the answer isn't right in front of you. One plus one is two. You don't need to throw it to AI
You don't.
just to
You
check
don't.
what
You
it would
don't.
suggest. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't need a
But yeah,
bazooka to kill a cockroach. So.
well, yeah, fair. Uh, there's one question that we missed, and I think this will be a short one. So before the rapid pause, let's keep this as the last question. Meenakshi inquired earlier that, well, to, what are the job and hiring trends in AI at the moment?
Again, this is a very broad question. So there, as I said, like now there's a lot of roles that are okay. A few things are happening. First of all, you're having a lot of roles blurring because now because of
Hmm.
AI coding assistants, product managers can code, engineers can design, and designers can do the other stuff as well. So there's a lot of roles that are blurring, and it's important generally at a high level to be able to be somebody who's at least got a grasp of different things. You don't need to be an expert at every single aspect, but you need to understand how things work. But in terms of AI specific roles, of course, there is a lot going on right now in the MLOps space. So how do you architect a pipeline? How do you serve it? How do you monitor observability? Infrastructure, that side. There's a lot going on in data
Hmm.
engineering, and rightly so, because without good data and a way to have data flowing through your system robustly, it's going to be a nightmare. Um, and I feel like the modeling aspect, I think, is changing. There are roles where in certain types of companies, where, for example, you work in computer vision oriented, that still has a lot of more like modeling specific roles. Whereas if you say you work in a generative AI type of company, then mostly you will be doing the AI engineering type of work. Whereas because like if you think about the models underneath, it's some kind of foundation model, and unless your company has a significant advantage by building its own foundation model, chances are they're going to be using one of the um, well-known models and just using those APIs. So then that becomes an AI engineering type of role. So there's a spectrum of roles available. What I would suggest is pick an entry point that is most suitable for your current skill set. So if you are a software engineer, then maybe pick an AI engineering type of role and then work towards that. And then if you still feel like you want to build expertise in modeling, and that's something you can do down the line, there's nothing stopping you. But if you,
Yeah.
for example, are like from a very traditional machine learning background and want to continue to build on modeling, then that's a separate can of worms, and so on and so forth. So again, there's a huge spectrum of roles available, which is fantastic. But also the bar for what will be accepted and not accepted is also going up quite a bit.
Yeah.
So
Thanks, Sairam. Uh, Thanks everyone who entered the raffles. Let's do our first raffle now. Uh, I'll just share my screen again. So if you can just let me know, Sairam, whenever you see my screen. And then, wow, we've got 14 entries. Can you see my screen?
yep.
Perfect. So I'll just hit draw. And this should randomly just pick up one of the winners. Subrat Pati. Uh, Congratulations, Subrat. You're on LinkedIn. So if you can just connect with either Sairam or me, just drop us a message and we will share the code with you. Congratulations. And anyone who hasn't won, please don't be disheartened. There is another giveaway. We'll do it towards the end of the session. Our first winner is Subrat. We'll do another one towards the end, and yeah, just comment hashtag packed in the comment section, and yeah, we will pick up another one towards the end of the session. So, just to continue with it, we've got a question from Vijay. He's got a lot of certifications, so I won't go in there. But Vijay on LinkedIn inquires ways and means of the projects with AI. Will this make difference in team structure, schedule, cost? And if so, what kind of adaptation is expected? Can you brief?
Okay, let me try to dissect the question first.
Yeah,
Um, so my understanding here is, given that you're using AI in projects, what is the difference in the team structure, schedule, and cost, and what adaptation is required by the teams to do this?
I guess,
Is that a fair understanding of the question?
I guess that is right. Vijay, if that is, if you can just comment, that would be helpful. I think that's a fair understanding of the question.
Okay, I'm going to assume that that's the question, and if Vijay have a different idea that you were trying to convey, I'd be happy to address that as well. So I think the thing that we're seeing a lot is many companies are saying, given that we have AI coding assistants and so on and so forth, we need to have a sharp increase in productivity. And it's easier said than done. First of all, one of the things that has to happen before we even start using these tools is like a cultural shift where you need to be comfortable working with AI tools. You need to be, and you need to be okay with the fact that you're sort of outsourcing your previous abilities to write really good code. And then you have to shift your focus into skills that are more crucial, like being able to do good PR reviews, being able to, check whether the code is well written, whether the design, focus more on the planning, the orchestration. And that takes time and that doesn't happen overnight. So, first of all, the cultural shift, and that has to come from the top. It cannot happen in one team in isolation. So, right from the
Mm,
topmost officials in a company down to the intern, it has to happen. That's when you'll actually see the biggest gains. The second thing is you need good tooling. Definitely, like if you're using some kind of custom tool because of privacy reasons or compliance or security, then you have to be okay with the fact that your productivity gains are going to be proportional, if any. You can't expect uh, you know industry average productivity gains if you're not using the industry standard tools. That's the second bit. The third bit is, as I said, roles are blurring. For example, product managers can now prototype, and a lot of them are beginning to do that. And previously, you would have to negotiate with engineering managers and buy engineers time to build a prototype or a mock-up and then be able to convince. Or if you are designing something, work with designers. Now, all of that is now easy for you. You don't know, there is no blocker. So literally, you are the bottleneck, right? So then being able to do those things, iterate quickly. And the third aspect is now the sheer speed at which a lot of companies are operating. Like it's very, the pace is kind of breakneck, and being able to understand and be okay with good enough and not chase perfection. Because at the end of the day, an AI project or an AI solution is iterative. You're never going to launch once and say that's the end of the day. You're always going to be iterating because once the model and the system goes live, there's a lot of things that happen after the fact. In terms of cost, I feel like there is, if you have the right tooling and you have the right set of engineers and designers and PMs, you can do more with less. And that is something that is much more heuristic and depends on the company and the talent and the cultural shift I referred to earlier. So there's no hard number on the cost, but of course on the flip side, it also means that you're now paying more for licenses and token costs and everything. So just
mm,
making sure that the teams are able to use these tools really well and effectively and getting the most out of them. That's so these are all intermingled. So and in terms of if you're asking about the iteration speed, as I mentioned, it's like the time to market has generally reduced for most of these solutions that people are building. So just being able to iterate quickly, but at the same time making sure that what you put out there doesn't uh, you know the blast radius is contained. You sort of have sort of graceful fail safe and being able to roll back issues. And the other thing that is more important in a lot of these solutions, as I mentioned earlier, is taste. So just being able to get something into users' hands, getting their feedback, and being able to work based on that, whether it's helping the user. At the end of the day, the user doesn't care what model you used. They don't care what
Mm.
amazing framework you used. They really care whether it's valuable and useful to them. And if that is not happening, then none of this other stuff is going to be useful. So um, the other aspect I feel is like if you are building custom models, then you have to think a lot about GPUs, infrastructure, whether you're going to host GPUs in on-prem or you're going to use a hybrid strategy of on-prem versus and cloud. All of that comes into. So there's a lot of things that are intermingled, but at a high level, I feel these are the things that have changed.
Thanks for that. There are two big questions coming up. One is a
Sure.
broad one, and the other one is just massively written. So I'll just read them out for you.
Okay.
Uh, Siddharth on LinkedIn is inquiring, what's your take on having an AI maturity model for the company? Perspective on path from proof of concept to production.
um, that's a trickier question. So can you give me like an example of that? So
Yeah. So that while you type an example in the chat, we'll pick up this query, and I'll move on to the next one. Until then, this is a big question over here. So Divakar Pathak on LinkedIn inquires, what's your recommended approach to staying current in AI while filtering out the hype, especially from an enterprise adoption perspective? In the short term, how should leaders assess the real business and real impact on of new models or frameworks like Cloud Code or AI security advances? And in the mid to long term, which research directions such as spatial intelligence, CHEPA, ABMs, or
wow.
neuromorphic computing do you see translating into tangible enterprise? Wow.
Oh my
I
God. So
think
you basically asked me for the Holy Grail and asking me like
yeah,
which of these paths will get AGI first almost. It's like that.
yeah. I,
But
I
I'll
think
try to
Sairam, we need to give you a
address.
break. Have you carried your magic crystal ball to see within and just to predict the future for the
I
second
wish
part?
I had AGI to answer this question. But jokes aside, okay. So let's tackle it one by one, right? So the first part is what's your recommended approach for staying current? I think you need to have very good curation. That is very important in the current era, right? So you like when access to information is now cheap, then the sources that you trust then become really important. So just good
Hmm.
curation, in my opinion, beats just listening to like a fire hose of information. So, and for that, I usually recommend like a few podcasts that you listen to from people who have been in the field for a very long time, who truly ask like very insightful questions to their guests. And then there are definite research papers that you can follow from certain labs where again that's becoming subjective now with AI again entering the field and being able to write papers or stuff like that. It's becoming harder to sift through the noise. There are certain newsletters you can read where they break down what's happening in terms of research, and of course company blogs are very valuable to understand how companies are productionizing or using AI. So that would be the first bit. Now the second part is like for an enterprise adoption perspective, that is a little trickier because the answer is it depends. There's never really a correct answer. What might work for one company may not work for another company. But in general, like being able to decide based on your constraints. For example, if you work in a company that does only embedded solutions, meaning that the model that you deploy has to run on some kind of embedded device, then trying to think about like large models that are scaling, that's like the wrong
Yeah.
adoption criteria. Of course, you could argue that, yeah, I could maybe take a large model and distill it into a smaller model, or I could maybe have this uh, you know, smaller model running on the embedded device, but then occasionally I get cloud access or something for the larger models for the complex queries. But then again, the point is you work back from the problems you're trying to solve in the enterprise for your customers, and then figure out like which areas are moving towards solving those problems, and that will allow you to filter out a lot of the noise. And then after that, I would also say like look at problems that are solved in the same constraints but in other domains. For example, if you see something for let's say you're working in language modeling. But let's just say you see something in speech or vision that is for embedded, but is using a certain type of idea. That might be something you could consider trying to see if you can glean some insights for you to use for your particular use case. So that is how I would approach it. Again, the answer is it depends. There's no right or wrong answer for enterprise adoption, but just don't go for things that they say like this is the only thing you need, or now this particular software or this particular tool is dead, it's no longer going to be useful. Avoid anything like that like the plague, but in general focus on things that are trying to address a core problem that exists in the way that we build and serve models, and then work your way from there. um, Second part of the question: should leaders assess the real impact of how new models or frameworks like Cloud Code um, or AI security advances? AI security, yes, definitely 100%. This is probably like an understated aspect at the moment. We are taking a lot for granted, if I'm being very honest, and we're going along quite rapidly, but it also comes with huge costs in security, safety, compliance, privacy. So yes, that has to be front and center. And frameworks like Cloud Code, I think Cloud Code is fantastic. Personally, use it a lot. Um, I think so. When you say assess the real impact of new models, do you mean like the impact on the environment? Do you mean like I'm not sure what the impact is, but or do you mean like impact on how fast you can get to the solution?
I think
So if
solution
it's
is what he's talking about for sure.
Okay, so impact, yes, definitely. Like as I said, like industry grade tools, there are certain tools that when you learn to use them, and when as a collective, you're able to understand how to unlock capabilities in these tools, it really speeds you up and it allows you to
Yeah,
get to answers faster than you would without. But again, it takes time to understand how best to use it, and then just being able to, especially for leaders, being able to understand how best to unlock their engineers and product teams potential using these tools. That's something that they have to assess for sure. And I think I covered the security aspect. And then mid to long term, which research directions? um, it's very hard to say. If I'm being honest, I've been trying to track spatial intelligence and Java personally because I am a perceptions guy at heart. So I really have been tracking that, but I don't think that I'm somebody who is able to answer like this is the like the crystal ball gaze into the future and this is what is going to come to enterprise. What I will say is we are at a point where we have insane capabilities in our hands, tools in our hands, and oftentimes I wonder whether we're taking them for granted. And we're not actually focusing on how good things are compared to 3 years ago, versus trying to figure out what's going to be the thing that solves the current first world problems that I have with the current tooling. So I would say like really think about how to maximize what's already available and extract all the juice you can from it um, at an enterprise level. Versus, I'm not saying you should shouldn't think about the future, but what I'm saying is don't spend too much time only thinking about the future when you have so much to do already and so much abilities to unlock. So that would be my answer.
great. I think Siddharth has clarified, so I'll just read his question again.
Sure.
So Siddharth's question was, what's your take on having an AI maturity model for the company? Your perspective on path from proof of concept to production. So his clarification is maturity levels. When he says that, he means ad hoc, proof of concept, pilot, scaled, optimized. And with respect to path to production, how can we make the MVP good enough to make it to production ready and iterate? Observability and SLO, SLI, SLA, anything else.
I think
I'll just
I
hop.
think he's covered a lot of ground himself. To be honest with
Yeah,
that, well done.
yeah,
What I want to say is um, every company has its own sort of checklist, to be honest. At least in my experience, that's been the case. And it also depends on the type of product you're building. If it's a generative, quote unquote, generative AI product, then there's a different set of constraints there that you have to think about it from like how do I go from something that is entirely uh, manual and requires the user to be when I say user, like like some employee to be hands-on part of it. For example, think of customer support. Do you want your customer support agent to be always there? To then go from like a bare bones chatbot that says, okay, this query is too complex for me. I'm going to route to a customer support agent, and then going from there
Hmm.
to step by step, sort of outsourcing the autonomy, right? I think that happens in stages, and that only happens in and the reason I'm sort of not giving you a concrete answer on this is because it really depends on the complexity of the application, and there are times where things will happen where that you could not have predicted,
Hmm.
because when these models that are working or interfacing with user are um, probabilistic, then that means that there are outcomes that you may not have considered. You may have a really good way of evaluating and testing things, which is very crucial. But at the same time, if you haven't encountered something, or it's not part of the things that you've tested, you need to know how to react. And if that happens in production, would you consider that as a POC level maturity, or would you consider a production level maturity, right? So there's it's that's why I say it really depends. But I think what you've given here, where you first maybe try to dog food it internally, test it out and break the kinks, and try it out, I think that would be very wise. And then, of course, there are different strategies where you can evaluate the maturity of a solution, like shadow deployment, for example, is one thing where you have a very robust solution you already have in the market. But when users are like interacting with it, your this model, whether it's an ad hoc POC, whatever it is, you have it respond to the user's queries, but you don't actually send out the responses. You actually see, okay, this is what my robust production system actually did. This is what my new POC is doing. And then that allows you to also get a sense of maturity. Then, of course, there's a maturity level in terms of scale as well, in terms of costs as well. And that only is something you can, while you can guesstimate it, it's something you learn as you scale a solution in production. So hopefully that gave you an answer, but I think you already had a pretty good list by yourself even before. So
Yeah. Unfortunately, there is no cookie cutter approach that, copy and paste applies to all. But
at least
yeah.
not that I know of. But I do
Yeah.
want to highlight one thing before if this question was in terms of generative AI thing, I do want to point out that Google has a wonderful white paper on production, and I would highly recommend that you read it. That might have more concrete maturity level um, guidelines versus maybe what I told you.
There you Siddharth is already happy with your response. So he says that makes sense. Thank you for the insights. And Siddharth, please just go and read that Google paper. Can you just say what the Google paper was again, Sairam?
It's actually a series. I think they had this 5-day generative AI course that they launched on Kaggle, and as part of that, one of it was I think it was they called it Agent Ops. But in general, those principles are really well thought through, and of course, at Google scale, you can if something works at Google scale, it's bound to work
Oh, yeah.
in most places. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. Google scale is internet level scale. All the data. And Divakar is also happy with your response. Great perspective and balanced answer, Sairam. Thanks for taking up the long question. I'd love to connect, discuss further. Da, da, da. Yeah. Uh, yeah, Siddharth, the name of the paper, I think we just said it.
Let
It's
me let me try to find it while you ask.
you know what, Sairam, I have a better way of doing it.
Sure,
Siddharth, follow Sairam's newsletter, and probably Sairam will try and publish it in this week's edition, or in the coming week's edition. You will find this paper with the detailed insights on it. Is that better?
sure. Or that's much better. Thanks for thanks for the plug.
Yeah,
And Siddharth, I mean, in any case, send me a DM. Happy
yeah.
to send it over to you.
Yeah, anyone who doesn't follow Sairam's newsletter already, Gradient Descent, 26,000 subscribers already. So please follow, guys. And yeah, he will share more about it in there. There are a few questions that we've missed. I'll come back to them. Uh, Ramya, thank you for being patient. So Ramya's question was for AI-led developments and migrations, what are the best practices one should follow to ensure it is up to standards? And what are the metrics we can use to measure the success of such projects?
Okay. I need to understand what you mean by migration specifically, Ramya. but I'm going to just talk about AI-led developments, meaning that AI-assisted developments. That's my interpretation of the question. I think the first one is, as I mentioned, you should have a very good sense of what good code looks like, what good software engineering looks like. That's a non-negotiable. The second bit is there is a framework. I don't want to sort of give like buzzwords here, but I came across a wonderful talk, and it's something that I've been sort of thinking about a lot recently with AI assisted development, which talks about first doing research, then doing planning, and then doing implementation. And the concept behind it is that when you have in traditional software, when you have a bug in your code, it's usually like one line or a localized set of lines, right? And then now when you have AI written code, it's usually like 2000 lines, uh, and you have to like find the needle in the haystack, which is a very painful process. Now imagine that your plan has a error, right? Like think of it like a like gates, right? So the first phase is research, second phase is plan, third phase is the code. Now, if your plan has an error, that would be several hundred lines of code that are wrong, that are not needed, or have bugs. Or over engineered, all kinds of issues. Now go one level back. If your research has a bug, right? If the spec, it's before you even write the spec, if the research, like the problem you're trying to solve, has a bug, then that means that your plan has a few hundred lines of uh, unneeded spec, and that compounds to your code, right? So, in terms of the time that you spend, majority has to go into the research, where you really think about what is the problem you're trying to solve, brainstorm thoroughly with the help of AI, and review it, because you can review a research a document, a markdown file, a lot more easier than several thousand lines of code. At scale, it's very, very hard to review thousands of lines of code every day. But you can review a markdown file that has like the research ideas, right? And then from there,
Mm,
what you do is then you go into the planning phase. Once you're happy with the research, then you take that, and then it's about condensing that entire research into a context that the model can generate a plan out of. If you give every line of research that you have been doing the brainstorming, you're already packing the context window with a ton of gibberish that the model doesn't need, and it's going to be wasting the model's ability to give you good output. Now you can figure out how to condense that research, synthesize it into a context that the model can really use, and then the plan becomes a lot more clear, and then you repeat this process for the implementation. Then it becomes cleaner code, and then you apply software engineering principles on top of that. You ensure that your code reviews are good, your bugs are caught early, you have CI/CD, you make sure that the entire process is you have gates at every stage, and you are doing the due diligence where it's needed. Then that makes it a lot more efficient. So that's in terms of AI led developments. Now, migrations, you talked about legacy code, right? So that's like
just
a brownfield
yeah,
problem.
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead,
She's mentioned it in
Tushar.
the chat. It's legacy
Yeah.
code.
So
Yeah,
legacy code is a little bit
she
trickier
clarified
because
migration.
um, if you think about it, the developer who wrote the code may no longer be at the company. So a line that says "do not touch," you have no idea why the comment says "do not touch." You don't know what will break because of it. But jokes aside, I think that requires a lot more careful consideration, and you have to be very delicate with it. Versus something that is a greenfield problem, where AI has sort of carte blanche, where you sort of work on the research plan really well, and then you come to the implementation, you're going to be in much better shape. With a legacy project, it's about giving AI the right context to focus on, because you may have thousands of files and you may have a lot of dependencies. So when what is the thing that the AI should be focusing on, and what are you trying to fix? Are you trying to reduce tech debt? Are you trying to implement a new feature on top of this legacy code? What is your scope? And then from there, sort of working your way through the process that I just mentioned, right? That helps. But the point is, if it's legacy code migration, it should be a lot more carefully done. Not saying that greenfield is a lot more free, but in general, you have lesser constraints. So you get to make sure that the standards and the quality and the design, everything is up to what you would expect. So hopefully that answers your question.
I think I just saw Divakar's comment and thank you, Divakar. I wasn't following Gradient Ascent, just did now. Thanks. So I think everyone should follow Gradient Ascent if you want to hear more from Sairam. And by the way, the course is that Sairam was talking about. I'll just pop it up on screen so all of you can see. Ta-da-da. It's on Kaggle. It's called 5-Day AI Agents Intensive Course with Google. I've just highlighted it.
Yeah, and there's a
That's the course.
companion
It's on
course for
Kaggle.
generative AI in the same page. So if you go and look
Yeah.
there, you'll
Yeah.
see the agent ops being listed there, and then the productionizing aspect. I would highly
Yes.
recommend reading those. Very, very good
They fine about it.
um,
Yeah.
source.
Yeah. And it's an interactive course. So yeah, please have a look at this. But yeah, Sairam, you should cover this in one of your upcoming features.
I think I will.
I'm pretty yeah. Um, okay. Should we take up one last question? We've got 4 minutes, but these questions are really long. You tell
I'm
me.
happy to take a couple more. Let's do it.
Let's do one last question. Okay. So Venkatesh on LinkedIn inquires, as we move from single model prompts to compound AI systems, that is chains, agents, and multi-step workflows, what is the biggest hidden design bottleneck you see? Is it latency, state management, or the lack of deterministic testing?
I would say it's the state management and lack of testing. Latency does come into the picture, and I think that's a choice where you have more control by choosing the right type of workflow. But in terms of state management, as I just mentioned, right, making sure that the context is not polluted and being able to know what can go wrong and being able to anticipate, or being, fail safes for being able to catch something in production that you missed. Like, because if the LLM goes in, like, let's take a concrete example, right? For example, Air Canada, I think recently there was this thing where they had a chatbot. If I'm not wrong, I think it was Air Canada. So please, this is from my recollection. So they had a chatbot that was going to, you know, reduce the number of customer support calls. And one of the things that the customer asked is there a bereavement refund policy? And the chatbot confidently said, yes, there is, when there was no bereavement refund policy.
Oh,
So the customer canceled the ticket and asked for a refund, only to be told it's not going to happen. And then I think it went to court and then they had to pay out. But then the argument was something along the lines of, the model is like from somebody else. Or I don't know the details, but the point is that is something you could have caught through your test suite, but it's not something that is like, okay, I have to cancel the trip versus I have to cancel the trip because of this very niche thing that happened in the last minute that I had no control over. Like that's, that kind of situation that doesn't happen often, like, the tail end ones that don't really appear a lot in your commonly encountered scenarios. And the more and more you're sort of giving control or relinquishing control, I should say, to these models, the more and more you're going to encounter things that you haven't seen in your testing. And then now you're talking about chaining, right? Which means you're combining, let's say, potentially one agent to do the planning, and then maybe it has a bunch of tools that it can access, and then maybe it has other agents doing smaller bits. It's going to become more and more complicated. And then the error compounds, and then the non-determinism also compounds. So
yeah,
this, to me, is the bottleneck. Just figuring out how do you handle memory and how do you handle the lack of predictability.
yeah. Just for my general knowledge, just yeah. Well, the problem that you stated without naming names, but was that a hallucination issue or was it just the parameters and the rules not set right to get a
It was
sample?
a hallucination issue as far as I'm aware.
Okay, all right, okay, yeah. All right. Thank you so much, and thank you everyone for asking your questions. Let's do another raffle. I'm keen, like everyone's waited for such a long time. It feels really bad. Should we do two more?
I'm okay to do
What do
a
you
couple
feel?
more.
Yeah. Okay. Let's do two more. So Subrat, you were the first one. So Subrat, please reach out to me or to Sairam, and we'll pass on the code to you for your 50% off voucher. And this is the second one that we will do now. Let's do two more. That's good. Evangeline Suresh, congratulations, Evangeline Suresh. Uh, this one again is from LinkedIn. So, Evangeline, please reach out either to me or Sairam, and we will pass you your voucher. Congratulations. We'll do one last quickly. Thanks for that, Sairam. Quite generous of you to do three. Satish Krishnan on LinkedIn. Congratulations, Satish. So we've got Subrat, Satish, and Evangeline. Congratulations, three of you. Please contact me or Sairam and we'll pass you your voucher codes. And yeah, thanks everyone for your time. And is there any closing notes that you would like to say?
Just wanted to say thank you for the wonderful questions and apologies for any questions that we weren't able to get to. Please send me a message and connect on LinkedIn or through my Substack. I would love to see how I can help you.
Yeah, be like
And yeah,
Divakar,
of
guys.
course.
Gradient ascent. That's how
And
you spell gradient ascent.
and
Go for it.
definitely, very excited about the workshop coming up in a couple of days, and we're going to do two very interesting problems, and hope you can join us there.
Perfect. Thank you so much, everyone. Yeah, that's about it. Uh, See you soon. Next week, I have another session. Please join us for that. It's a session on Python. But yeah, thank you, everyone. Thanks, Ayam.
Pleasure. Thanks all.